we're going to talk about pattern and value related to our exploration of elements of art. But like we've talked before, we're always going to try to incorporate principles of art, scale and proportion, unity and variety, and of course, all in the guise of making these pattern values interesting, both in pencil and in ink. We're going to start off by just discussing what patterns are. It's basically choosing a theme and running with it and repeating those themes throughout your gradient, right? Any gradient in this case is our value shift, right? We've talked about gradients before related to color, and before that related to form. And remember also that within the bigger picture of elements of art, pattern incorporates line, shape, form, value in this case, because we're adding in value or that value shift. And we're going to try to make interesting value shifts with our patterns using all of these and even some principles of design. So in this case, I would like to show you some samples that I've done with pencil and in pen. And in the beginning, my patterns are very simple, but I'm always keeping in mind that value shift. So going from 100% black to 100% white or close to, and trying to build off each other. So at first I may start simple, but then I get a little bit more complex. If you are failing to come up with ideas or you're struggling, I urge you to look up patterns on Google, patterns on Pinterest. I'm also using a template that I've cut out because we're going to be making our patterns 2 centimeters by 7 centimeters. And these templates that I've used, you can make, or you can just measure them out since you don't have to do very many. But let's look at what a couple of examples look like. I always suggest whenever you're working on anything to start with a theme and develop them from there. That is classic design thinking or iteration design, where you design something and then improve upon it, or maybe you don't improve upon it and you make it worse. Well, even though you may make it worse, we're always learning as we go. In this case, I've chosen this kind of arc or ribbon kind of theme in these arc formations and differing curves. And I'm adjusting and playing around with variety. In this case, the variety of sizes of these ribbons. You notice as they're getting bigger and their proximity is also getting further apart. And also I'm playing around with this kind of dark background. That's another thing that you might want to consider whenever you're working. I'm going to stick with pencil, but this time develop this with just line and less of a thicker line, but keeping that same kind of arced or U-shaped theme. And again, playing again with proximity. And not necessarily line weight, but more like proximity within each other. And they're all relatively like the same size, although I'm adjusting the density on the left-hand side just to up that darker value. And in this case, I'm going to adjust using pen and coming back with that kind of same idea and maybe adjust it just a hair, that same idea of this arc or ribbon, and adjusting the spaces in between them and maybe even the length of them or the size of them. We'll see how it goes. In this last example, I'm really playing up the fact that I have different line weights of pen, And I know you don't have access, some of you don't have access to these sizes of pen, so just use what you have, maybe your Sharpie and your liner pen and maybe even your pencil as your different line weights, and just adjust from there. I'm gonna keep going and make some samples, and I'll see you next time. Take care, guys.